Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into what I think is one of the absolute most fascinating historical mysteries in the entire English language. We're going to figure out exactly why we write down letters that we literally never say out loud.
I mean, think about it. Have you ever wondered why we spell night with a K or knife with a K when we never actually make that sound? It can be incredibly frustrating, right? Especially if you're learning the language. I like to think of these silent letters kind of like an old photograph of a friend. You know, the person in the photo has changed completely over the years. They've grown up, they've moved on, but the picture itself, it remains exactly the same, just frozen in time. Well, our modern spelling is exactly like that old photograph.
Section 1. The Silent Letter Mystery, a tale of two Englishes. So let's look at how our spoken words evolved super rapidly, while our written words became rigidly frozen in time. Just look at the complex written spelling of night, K-N-I-G-H-T, battling against the super simplified modern phonetics, basically just N-A-I-T. The written form literally packs in 5 consonants for a single one-syllable word, while the spoken form has just stripped all that complexity completely away. It perfectly illustrates this bizarre rift between spelling and pronunciation that causes so much confusion today. Moving on to Section 2, when knights said the K, the Germanic roots of English. To actually solve this mystery, we've got to travel way back to the eras of Old and Middle English. See, English is fundamentally a Germanic language, and back then, that K was proudly and deliberately pronounced.
Going back to around 1000 AD, in Old English, you would have spelled it C-N-I-H-T, and you absolutely would have fully pronounced that initial hard sound. In fact, before the 15th century, you actually would have said, "I know the k-night will k-knock." Wild, right? But as we move along the timeline into the early modern English period around the 1600s, those distinct heavy consonant sounds started to permanently fade from spoken English.
So the really crucial point here is that in early modern English, morphological constraints began to outweigh phonological ones. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, it basically means that keeping the visual, written shape of a word, its morphology, became way more important to society than its adaptable spoken sound, or, how the word was actually said aloud.
And this shift didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was heavily influenced by this massive influx of Romance loanwords from French and Latin right after the Norman conquest. These loanwords brought completely different stress rules with them. They often stressed the final syllable rather than the first. And this permanently altered the entire soundscape, the rhythm, and the stress patterns of the English language. It basically made those old Germanic heavy consonant clusters feel incredibly clunky to speakers.
Section 3. The Printing Press Time Capsule, frozen in the 15th century. Okay, but if the spoken language was changing so drastically, why on earth didn't the spelling change right along with it? Well, let's meet the prime suspect in our linguistic mystery, the emergence of the printing press. You see, the standardization of spelling was largely started by the Chancery back in the 15th century. The political and social elite of London really wanted a unified written standard for their official purposes. And then, when the printing press arrived, it just adopted this Chancery standard. By doing so, the emerging printing industry effectively locked these archaic 15th century spelling habits into place, pretty much forever.
The printing press was just way too powerful of an institution. It standardized spelling based on those archaic habits and completely ignored the ongoing regional pronunciation changes that were happening out in the streets. And hey, even though 16th century linguistic reformers valiantly tried to fix the spelling to actually match the changing speech, the massive power of established printing habits won out. It essentially created a permanent time capsule.
But actually, there was a hidden benefit to this time capsule. Visually speaking, the K easily separates the knight in shining armor from the dark of night. Keeping that silent K really helped differentiate written homophones. Without these silent letters, written English would just be totally flooded with confusing duplicates, like no and no, or not and not.
Section 4. Speech leaves spelling behind. The lazy tongue theory. So while the spelling was completely locked down by the printers and the London elite, the spoken language honestly just didn't care. It continued its own dramatic, rebellious evolution across all sorts of diverse regional dialects.
And this dramatic divergence is actually really easy to map. While the spelling stays incredibly static, the spoken sound morphs. It goes from the harsh Old English knixt to a softer Middle English knight, and finally, thanks to the great vowel shift, to our modern night.
But why did the K specifically disappear? Well, for that, we can basically blame human biology and our inherent desire for efficiency.
The physical act of pronouncing a K and an N right next to each other, it's a really busy, awkward tongue twister. Think about it. You have to block air with the back of your tongue for the K and then immediately use the tip of your tongue behind your upper teeth for the N. Out of pure articulatory laziness, our ancestors simply started dropping the K entirely.
Furthermore, some linguists suggest a truly fascinating theory, that this dropping of the K actually started specifically in expressive, forceful words. Words denoting pressure or blows, like knock, knack, or knob, were often spoken under heavy emphasis. This constant forceful use might have directly contributed to the simplification of the sound, which then sort of systematically spread like wildfire to everyday, non-symbolic words like knife and knee.
Section 5. The Continental Contrast. How German and Dutch kept the K. But wait, what if I told you that our European neighbors didn't actually commit this linguistic crime? Other languages from the exact same Germanic family tree completely held on to their roots.
If we contrast the English experience with German and Dutch, we see a totally different outcome. These other languages proudly preserve that initial K, like the German word for knee is Knie, and their cognate for night is Knecht. They just never went through the same articulatory reduction that English did.
And this builds directly into the physical science of speech, articulatory coordination, which is the exact physical overlap and timing of how our mouths form consonant clusters. It differs wildly across languages. Actual sensor data shows that languages like German and French have very different percentages of articulatory overlap between consonants compared to English. This physical difference in timing explains precisely how German speakers managed to preserve these complex sounds, while English speakers just slurred them together and eventually dropped them entirely.
Section 6. Silent Letter Practice Round. Test your knowledge. All right, let's put what we've learned in this explainer to the test. Let's see if you can spot the ghosts of these ancient sounds that are still hiding right there in our everyday writing.
First, try to look for the hidden Old English K in everyday words like knife, knob, or knit. Got it? Okay, next, spot the vanished G, which, by the way, went through the exact same reduction process in words like gnaw, gnat, and gnome. And finally, just notice how these silent ghosts magically prevent us from confusing new, with a K, with the word new. They really aren't just mistakes, they're functional historical markers.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought to ponder. Our spoken dialects are definitely still shifting today. They're constantly evolving and changing. But will our printed spelling ever be reformed to match the modern tongue? Or are we, thanks to the chancery and the printing press, just forever trapped in a 15th century time capsule? Next time you write a silent K, remember the knights of old and the printing presses that kept their memory alive in ink, if not in sound. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.